Well, hello again, everyone. This is Ted Schmidt, Action Coach Northwest, and this is another edition of our Business Spotlight podcast. And today, our guest is Terry McCorkle. He's the CEO and co-founder of PhishCloud Inc. So, welcome, Terry, and thanks for being our guest today.
Ted, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, curious to hear your insights and get some of your words of wisdom. So, let's just jump right into those questions. First question we're going to ask you today, if you had to start from square one in business, what would you do differently?
Yeah, that's a big question for me. One of the big things in our case specifically, I really wanted to launch the business from a software perspective. We have a software product, and at the same time, I was doing some professional services early on to kind of help float by while we did initial development. One of the decision points we came to was, do we continue doing professional services, or do I go seek funding for the product itself and try to raise the seed round and A round, etc. So we made the determination to go ahead and go the seed route, which means I put a lot of effort into seeking angel investment and seeking, advice from people.
Mm-hmm.
Went to many different angel groups and VCs and got their advice and their feedback. And what I realized later on is we should have kept those professional services going as well, just to help keep the boat floating while, funding is, sometimes with funding, it's either there or it's not. And you can go down a lot of different paths to try to raise that funding and
Mm.
spend a lot of time and effort going through that process, that ultimately, it may or may not work out. So having that kind of backup of having a professional services organization in our case is where we've pivoted to, but also where I would have kept that going had I
Right,
had I been
right.
able to restart it. So I guess my advice there is really, stick with something that you're really specialized in, and make sure that you're staying connected to, that advisor consulting perspective, because that also keeps you connected to your customers and keeps you connected to the industry. Otherwise, it's easy to go into a hole and focus purely on product without necessarily getting all the feedback you may need.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting. That's kind of a unique one. Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, funding can be tricky, can it? Right?
It,
So,
it can,
yeah.
and there's a lot to be learned about that route as well.
Yeah.
Some companies move into that very quickly, and it's all about performance at the end of the day. So if you're starting with an idea and it's still in an idea stage, a lot of times it just makes sense to spend a little more effort on mapping out that idea, where it's going to go, how do you market it, those sort of things.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. All right. What have been your biggest learnings, or excuse me, what have your biggest learnings been as an employer since you began in business?
So the biggest thing for me is learning the HR process, and there's a lot that goes into onboarding employees, and a lot that goes into, making sure payroll and insurance and benefits and all those
Sure.
sort of things are lined up. So for me, I think the biggest place that I've learned is, managing that. You need the right people that you can trust to help with that, to delegate that. Uh, but when you're young, a young organization, you may not have that. So as a CEO or co-founder, somebody has to kind of manage that process and manage, bringing people on, and learn that, from a business perspective, so you can then outsource that. But
Right.
it's important to understand those processes, and that takes time. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
a lot to
No,
learn.
hiring is tricky as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There
Getting
you go.
getting good people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What are some common misconceptions about running a business and how do you address them?
I'd say biggest misconception, a lot of people, when you talk to them and you tell them you run a company or you're a CEO, there's different perspectives on what that means. And I think a lot of folks think that the CEO is there to kind of dictate what happens. And for me, at least, I look at it as trying to find the right people who, they're adults and they can manage the process, and you don't have to be giving them, straight commands on what to do and what not to do. So from running a business perspective, I think there's, being the leader of an organization a lot of times doesn't get the level of respect that, that it should.
Hmm.
And you end up learning that it's you have to put the time in and get things done, no matter whose responsibility it was. Sometimes you have to be, really following your company. And I've watched a lot of other CEOs and heard stories where they had somebody that was supposed to be managing a task and they weren't checking in on them as often as they should, and it ends up, falling apart.
Wow.
So I'd say from a misconceptions perspective, though, I guess I didn't know all the things that go into running a business. And, that to me is actually the fun part of it. Is I always approach my career as, focusing on learning something new and bettering myself and learning new things. And this really, running a company really thrusts you into the middle of that. And there's a lot more there that you have to learn than you may
Oh yeah.
think.
Yeah, I
So
see that a lot. I see that a
you
lot.
gotta have a very open mind to be in business these days.
Well, and one day I was talking to a client this morning, and you have to be willing to change. You got to be able to change. If you're not willing to change, get tricky.
Have
So
to happen. And
yeah,
I think that is one area that, sometimes we took longer to pivot than we should have.
yeah,
But we did learn a lot of lessons from each one, and, track those lessons.
yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's see. Question number 4, coming up on halfway here. What do you attribute your growth to?
Perseverance. So
Perseverance.
we have not raised a lot of money, and so we've stayed very capitally efficient. That makes sense. And
Mhm.
tried to because we launched, actually, our product launched 10 days after COVID shut down a lot of small businesses, and we were
Wow.
targeting small businesses for the first version of PhishCloud. And so we had to pivot very, very carefully around that, started working with managed service providers to try to scale that way. Uh, so I'd say, as we've grown and as we've uh, been out there, even with a limited budget, it's being consistent with things like sending emails and posting on LinkedIn and having that marketing function. Even if you can't put a lot of money into it, there's still ways to be reaching out.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to, figure out, the best ways to get your data sources, or, where are you going to find your user audiences? How do you best approach them? So we spent a lot of time learning that early on, and now that there is some funding, it actually picks up a lot quicker because you've learned a lot of those lessons.
Yeah.
So I'd say I attribute our growth so far to being willing to pivot when we need to, and just perseverance, right? Things get
Yeah.
hard sometimes,
Yeah.
and you have to
Well,
push
yeah.
through.
Especially COVID. I mean, that was a tough time. I mean, this our whole state of Washington got shut down. I mean, that, it was interesting to see the dynamic because we're in Spokane, we're only about 20 miles from the Idaho border, and Idaho did not shut down all the small business. So it was a different dynamic. So it was interesting to see what was going on there. So yeah, there were definitely some unique challenges going on at that time. That's for sure. So
Yeah, and I think the book Hard Thing About Hard Things, that they really did a great job of, Ben Horowitz, he does a great job of going through, like, there's hard decisions that have to be made, and the perseverance piece of it is huge, because when you're facing those hard challenges, sometimes people will want to quit, but as a CEO or co-founder, or other members of a startup, you all have to have that vision of, we're going to push through it no matter what.
yeah, yeah, there's no turning back, right? Once you
All hands on deck.
Yeah, perseverance is I hear that a lot. It's really true. I mean, it is hard. Being a business owner is a hard thing. And you got to persevere. That's absolutely true. So, okay, how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
That's a great question, and that, I would say, is one of the biggest things I've had to learn over the years, and I'm nowhere close to being able to say I have a balanced life. But the I think the real goal with balancing is, where do you spend your time? As somebody who works in the computer industry, I spend most of my time at a screen when I'm working.
Hmm.
So trying to balance, for example, I've learned that, I have a garden that I grow, and I've learned
Cool.
to take calls from the garden, or spend more time out someplace where it's more relaxing, right? Trying to find that kind of balance. But a lot of self-reflection, and thinking through the challenges that you're facing, and actually trying to play that out of, what are the different routes we can go here. Um,
Yeah. Think
but
time.
it's
Yeah.
time to think, right?
Yeah.
Give yourself
Yeah.
that time to think. But at the same time, I also made sure that I set dates with my wife. So, there's Tuesday nights are booked off because we do trivia. And finding those outlets to make sure you do spend time with your family, and booking that as part of your schedule, so that you have that time to dedicate.
Yeah.
And those are things I've learned over the years. When I first started, it was a lot more work. That I wouldn't say it's more work, but you learn to be more efficient. Right?
Yeah. It doesn't really get easier. You just get better, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
getting those systems in place so that you have processes around it. That way you're not constantly firefighting, or
Yeah.
coming. You need to balance a lot of things as a entrepreneur.
Yeah, a lot of times, I know what you mean. Firefighting is, you're just kind of reacting to everything versus being, proactive and having the systems and getting out in front of it. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Great insight there. Okay. Here we go. 3 questions left. What qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment?
That's a great question, and I've come up through a lot of different organizations, worked for large organizations and small organizations, and my prior startup was acquired, so I was early at a startup prior to this. And the one thing that I learned, and the people that I met that I've really formed connections with, are the people who show up and they're there to work, and it's something they're passionate about. It's not something that I have to try to drive them to want to be there, or push somebody uh, to have to show up. Right.
Mm,
So I look for people, adults that are responsible and driven, right? That drive, to me, is the number one quality. And that is looking at things like, are they continuing to take training? Are they continuing to take certifications? Is this something they're putting their own time into, beyond
Yeah.
what an employer would have them do?
Yeah.
And that's probably the strongest quality I'm looking for, is somebody who's always they're always working on themselves, always improving, because that's a quality that you can work with. You can now it's somebody who wants to do training. It's somebody that wants to learn.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's my number one.
Self-improvement. Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Okay. What question should I be asking you that I haven't?
This one I got kind of stuck on. I wasn't sure, but I think one of the big things in business that a lot of people go into without thinking about it is, the how you're going to position your product and then find the funding or the financing to actually grow. And I think there's a lot to be said around what types of funding sources there are, and how did you go about it? Because there's, for example, you look at angel groups and how they operate. You have to learn who they are and how they work, and how they share ideas, and then you have to learn which groups you trust and who in those groups you trust, right? And as you grow, who you listen to and who you get that advice from makes a big difference,
Hmm.
right? So get a lot of perspectives, but I would say that's an area that I think a lot of entrepreneurs may not think all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excuse me, that's very insightful. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Last question, almost there. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And any words of advice for other business owners who are looking to grow their business?
In 5 years, I'd like to be irrelevant. So
Love
five
it.
years from now, I'd like my organization to be running on its own, so that if I do want to take a couple of days vacation, I'm not worried about it. But I think that's part of that work-life balance.
Yeah.
Um, right now, it's a lot of hours and not a lot of time off. But my ultimate goal, though, is to build an organization where we have people who are here and passionate about what they're doing, and they're going to keep driving that vision that we have. And our vision is to really help empower humans to be able to detect phishing and prevent the actions that these attackers and hackers are taking. So when I got into this, it was really about it was something I was very passionate about. So that's where I'd like that vision to follow on, and have my employees understand that and keep pushing. And so far, we've been able to do that. So we're growing, and the organization is, really seeing how all of us are coming together. And I'm looking forward to continuing that process, and eventually being able to have it running.
Yeah. Eventually it runs without you, right?
Yeah, that's the eventual goal. So 5 years
Yeah.
from now, I hope to see that.
So any advice for other business owners looking to grow? Word of wisdom there.
Patient and look for the opportunities. Like, a lot of times, I think uh, entrepreneurs have a tendency to jump first and then
Yeah.
look. And I'm an optimist. I'll admit that. So my advice would be, weigh your different options and make sure you're getting a lot of advice. Read some good books, right? And watch some Simon Sinek videos to
Yeah.
focus on the why, right?
Focus on the
That is
why. Yeah.
that is key.
Start with why. Start with why. Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you, Terry. Terry McCorkle, CEO and co-founder of PhishCloud Inc. Thank you so much for being our guest today on our Business Spotlight podcast.
Really appreciate it, Ted.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.